Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. And speaking of good news, Devin, one of our great producers here in the break, told me that pumpkin spice is exploding on menus because there is such a popular demand for it, because I was saying that I am drinking pumpkin spice coffee this morning. Of course I am. And if you are not either, I question your life choices. You should be drinking pumpkin spice. And so I actually went in and Googled this, and according to Restaurant Business Online, their headline is actually "Pumpkin Spice is exploding on menus, and it's earlier than ever due to the high demand." Isn't that great? So we always bring you all the good news here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning. But let's turn to now artificial intelligence, which is not necessarily good news. And I think that conservatives need to be very wary of artificial intelligence and the potential dangers that this may impose in terms of government regulation and oversight. And according to a piece in Axios this morning, the CEOs, including Musk and Zuckerberg, are heading to Capitol Hill. So the CEOs of the most powerful U.S. tech companies are heading to Capitol Hill next month for Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's first AI Insight Forum. So that will be very interesting. And joining me now to discuss is Carl Szabo, who is of course, the Vice President and General Counsel for NetChoice and a professor of Internet Law at George Mason University. So, Carl, great to have you back on the program. And what do we anticipate from this type of AI forum on Capitol Hill? That seems a little concerning to me.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. And it should be, because on the one hand, we want our elected leaders to actually understand information, understand technology, understand what they are being asked to regulate. But on the other hand, it is very likely that this will turn into kind of a food fight grandstand discussion about things that aren't necessarily AI related. Right now, we are having a very immature conversation from many of our elected leaders on the issue of, quote, AI. So I'll give you an example. California introduced a bill to ban and regulate all algorithms. And so what is an algorithm? An algorithm is basically just something that helps me make a decision. So when I push a button on the elevator to go up or down, there's an algorithm, a computer, that decides which floor it should stop at. So right now, we're having very immature discussions on AI. So what I'm actually giving several presentations across the country on this, trying to help people understand what is artificial intelligence, what does it actually mean for us. And more often than not, the conversation devolves into one of two camps. Either AI is racist or AI is the Terminator. And these are issues that we can actually address, that we already have laws on the books to address, and that we are able to deal with today. So, for example, if I were to engage in discrimination, whether it's somebody walks into my office and I don't like what they're wearing, I don't like, something about them, and I give them an inappropriate dismissal, we have laws today, many of them, that make bias discrimination in hiring, lending, housing, all these things illegal. And it doesn't matter how you do it, whether it's me looking at you or whether it's done through a computer. And so what we're oftentimes doing is seeking new laws to regulate things that we can already regulate today. And so from these discussions, I worry that we're going to see a big push to ban AI, to put a 6-month delay on development, or we're going to see certain businesses trying to block competitors and new innovations from coming. And that's really myopic. That's the real danger for us, because we know this. If we ban technology, we ban development, the only people who are going to comply are going to be the good actors. Our foreign adversaries, criminals who are using AI to engage in fraud, deception, theft, all these bad actions, they're going to continue to develop and use AI in ways that we don't want them to. And that doesn't even get to the whole issue of what our foreign adversaries like Iran, China, Russia are going to use and develop and get ahead of us in AI. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. I'm expecting, unfortunately, not much, and giving an excuse for certain lawmakers, certain businesses to stop America's innovation, stop America's development.
Wow, and this really does seem very short-sighted to simply say, well, AI is racist and fit this very neatly into more of the liberal view and bring up more of the DEI sorts of considerations that the left thinks are so paramount, instead of actually addressing the issue, which is what is AI, and if America doesn't stay ahead of this and actually have substantive commentary and discussions about potential regulation, then we're going to get behind. And it also strikes me, as you're saying, these are very non-sophisticated conversations. It reminds me of some of the hearings where, some of the members that really are just, let's face it, in the much older generations that don't use some of the latest technology or aren't aware of it, talking, for example, about social media. I mean, some of these members who clearly aren't on Snapchat, they're not on TikTok. And so they're not speaking and conversing in understanding what they're even dealing with. And so how can they possibly try to regulate this or do anything in America's best interest from a legislative perspective if they don't even understand the nature of the tech that they're dealing with?
Exactly. And, part of the concern that I'm starting to see is, so a lot of these businesses will go to these meetings. They want to be in the room where it happens. And so the Biden administration actually just released their quote unquote voluntary commitments from AI companies. And of course, these AI companies are kind of strong-armed into these meetings. The way it plays out is, your competitor will be there. Don't you want to be there too? And say, okay, yeah, I guess I do. And they focus on these distractions like fairness and bias, publicized capabilities, and societal risks. And it's all centered around kind of these woke agenda items, rather than looking at issues that are affecting us on day-to-day basis. I'm a teacher, and for every teacher and every student, every parent across the nation, for the first time in the course of human history, we're dealing with AI in the classroom. The ability of students to basically put in a couple of words and generate entire essays. And this is a new challenge that our elected leaders aren't really discussing, that needs to be discussed, and will actually impact Americans today on a daily basis. And it impacts teachers today as we go back to school. And so those are some of the conversations that should be happening, not whether it is going to be used to engage in discrimination, because once again, if anybody engages in discrimination, we have laws today to address it. Not that it's going to become the Terminator and destroy us all, because we can control it. So these are the discussions that need to be happening, is how it impacts Americans today.
Yeah, and that makes so much more sense. Carl Szabo, who is the Vice President and General Counsel for NetChoice. And you also wrote a great piece recently in Fox News, and the title, the headline there is, "The Biden Administration is Giving Away America's AI Dominance," and giving away our global AI leadership in a war to advance the progressive agenda. So how concerning is this that the leftists and the Biden administration is attempting to regulate AI based on woke standards instead of metrics and standards that they should be using?
Yeah, this is one of the big dangers, too. Look, we've spent the last 3 years having our freedoms just taken away from us. Right now, many of us across the country can't even go and buy a gas stove. And the lack of energy independence has made us critically dependent on foreign adversaries like Russia, like Iran, for their oil because, well, basically we gave away our energy independence. What we are seeing from the Biden administration is the same effort to give away our technological independence. We are hearing calls from the quote-unquote elites to stop development of artificial intelligence, whatever that may be, because of the potential societal risks. They want to make sure that AI doesn't create disinformation or misinformation or election interference, whatever those terms may or may not mean to people on the left, are very different from what they may or may not mean to people on the right. And so rather than letting Americans have the freedom to innovate, freedom to get information, to seek out information, and make decisions for themselves, what we are seeing from many people, including this administration, is that they want to control AI. They want to control the businesses that develop it, and they want to make sure that whatever content is used is not used to besmirch the names of President Biden or the Democratic Party. And this gets into the discussion that we had last week on misinformation and disinformation, which are these catch-all phrases. And instead, they're being used now by the Democrats to control the next piece of innovation, next piece of technology, which is AI, and trying to make sure that, quote, disinformation and misinformation is not permeated or populated by that. And, you know, there is a way to deal with this. I look at AI, and the way to address AI is kind of a three-legged stool. You have transparency, accountability, and security. All of this can be done by businesses. All this can be done by self-reg. All this can be done by Americans without government. Transparency, tell people when it's AI generated. Accountability, every single law, we have hundreds of them, if not thousands, that apply to normal people, apply to AI. And finally, security. When you collecting and using data to retrain, make sure that you're not using people's personal sensitive information without their consent. If we follow those three rules, we don't need the government. We don't need it coming in. We don't need it throttling this next great innovation.
And that's really interesting. And I think your observation that this new technology already falls under a lot of the laws and regulations that we already have on the books is very smart, because we've seen throughout America's history, and certainly in the tech innovation and other things, that obviously speech online, for example, still falls under the First Amendment in certain ways. And we already have certain case law and jurisprudence that would cover some of these other things. It's not that we have to recreate the wheel when we're talking about a written document from a quill pen versus typing this out on a letter that you post online. I mean, there are some things, and obviously the analogies and the way that they are analogous can be debated, but it's not like we have to go back and create an entire separate body of law that will cover all of these things. And so from more of a 30,000 foot perspective, what are maybe in your mind some of the benefits of AI? Because it seems like to me, when we're talking about this in the media more broadly, there is more concern over it, or maybe just fear of it, because I think people really don't understand exactly what it is, what it's capable of, what it can be used for. So they do then tend to say, well, this is going to be like the Terminator, and, Elon Musk has said this may take over the world and end humanity as we know it. And so because of the lack of genuine understanding of what it is, then maybe we tend to overreact or just react that this is all negative instead of some of the potentials.
So let me give you two examples that I think really strike home in part for me. Breast cancer is a good example. So right now, AI is able to look at millions, if not billions, of mammograms. And that's something no human could ever do. We don't have enough time. And it can look for patterns, and it does it way better than we do because it has perfect recollection and perfect memory. And it can look through these millions of mammograms, and it can actually detect precancerous cells better than a radiologist can, better than a doctor can, because, well, it can learn. And it can actually be better at detecting breast cancer before it becomes a problem. And that is being used today. And that is a tool and technology that can be used in the cloud. So you don't have to have the best radiologists, the best doctors in your community. You can now get access to this technology. So it's democratizing this health benefit. The same thing's true for credit risk and things like that. So we can actually make sure that people who are able to qualify for a loan, qualify for a mortgage, they can get access. And then finally, spam filtering. One of the best ways that we block junk calls fake emails, stuff like that, is spam filtering. And that's all done through adaptive learning of machines. They see what patterns the bad guys are using, and they take steps to stop it. And so these are just a couple of the basic examples, not to mention the democratization, the ability for everyone to become better writers, better artists, better developers, better innovators. That's really what I'm looking forward to. And then as we go into this school year, and I'm sorry I keep coming back to that, my kids just went back to school this week. When calculators entered the classroom, everyone freaked out. We're going to have a death of arithmetic. We're going to have a death of math. And no, we still teach it. But what did calculators do? They allowed our students to actually do much more advanced mathematics at an earlier age. And we're going to see that with AI, where companies like the Khan Academy are creating customized learning experiences for people who do at-home learning, people who need a tutor but can't afford them. And so that's where AI is really going to come in. It's going to really help lift the people at the bottom up. And sometimes that's what scares the people at the top the most.
Yeah, because it's a threat to their power. But, this is always really interesting, and I think that we need to learn more about what the technology can be used for, and then make sure that the parameters of regulation are not so that we just protect the elites, but that we protect freedom and liberty, and obviously not allowing AI to be used for evil or nefarious purposes. But we do that with everything that we contemplate. So Carl Szabo, Vice President and General Counsel for NetChoice, always appreciate having you on the program. And those forums on Capitol Hill will be held September 13th. So we will circle back on this show when that happens. And we'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
Welcome.